You've chosen an awfully uneventful rainy day to drift off with. A day where the hours stretch, and the minutes dawdle, and the rain never seems to get bored of being rain. It's the kind of day where nothing really happens, and that nothingness becomes oddly comforting, like an old cardigan or a teapot that always pours just a little too slowly. We'll go through the day together. Not that there's much to get through. It's all just rain, and tea and windows, and maybe the quiet company of a cat later on. No drama, no twists, no surprises, just the steady patter of drops, and the unremarkable passing of time. Which, if you're hoping to drift into sleep, might be exactly what you were looking for. So, let's begin. The morning doesn't so much arrive as it sort of exists. There's no bright sunrise, no cheerful chorus of birds. Just a sky that looks like it misplaced its paintbrush, left everything grey, and decided that was enough for today. You wake, if you can call it that, to the sound of rain, not heavy, not dramatic. Just steady, as if the clouds were politely emptying themselves, one drop at a time, onto the roof, the windows, the garden, and everything else that had been minding its business. The light in the room is so dim that it's hard to tell if it's really morning or some oddly lit afternoon. The rain has flattened time itself into something smooth and unconvincing. You lie there, listening, not really thinking. The rain doesn't invite thought after all. It's too repetitive for that. Each drop is like the one before, and the one after. Distinct, but not memorable. You could count them, but you wouldn't get very far before forgetting what number you were on. And frankly, there are better things to do, like nothing at all. The air feels slightly cooler, damp in a way that isn't unpleasant, just noticeable enough that you tug the blanket a little closer. The house doesn't stir. The world outside is muffled. It's just you, the patter of rain, and the peculiar satisfaction of being entirely unproductive. Nothing urgent waits. Nothing exciting calls. And that is precisely the point. The rain doesn't let up. Not that you expected it to. It's the sort of rain that seems to have settled in, like an indecisive guest, who can't quite remember whether they were meant to leave or stay the whole week. So it stays. Dripping, pattering, tapping, each sound a small variation on a theme that has no end. You sit up eventually, though it's not urgent. Nothing about today is urgent. The window looks exactly as you imagined it would, streaked, blurred, with tiny rivulets racing each other downward. Not fast races, of course. The kind of races where no one really wins, because another drop joins the line, and then another, until everyone is too crowded to keep track of. You watch them for a while, because there isn't much else to do, and strangely enough, that's enough. Just watching droplets bump into each other, merge, wobble and slide down, leaving a faint trail behind. It's a pastime you didn't know you had until the weather forced it upon you. Somewhere in the house the pipes creak, not dramatically, just a small shift, as if even they were acknowledging the damp heaviness of the day. The sound disappears as quickly as it came, and the rain resumes its monopoly on the silence. The blanket slips off your shoulder, and you consider whether it's worth pulling it back up. It is. You do. And that small effort feels like the most you'll accomplish in this particular stretch of the morning. Which, frankly, is fine. The rain is steady, the room is quiet, and time, well, time seems to have forgotten about you altogether. The morning continues, or perhaps it doesn't. It's hard to tell. The light doesn't shift, the rain doesn't pause. If someone told you it was still the exact same minute you woke up in, you might believe them. Outside, the garden is glazed with water, every leaf bent under the weight of droplets, every patch of earth darkened, every stone shining with a reluctant sort of gloss. The grass looks flattened, though not dramatically so, just gently pressed down by patience and persistence. You lean a little closer to the window. Not for the view, exactly, but simply because it seems like something to do. The glass feels cool, almost damp from the condensation, and you notice a drop hanging at the very top, indecisive, wobbling. It clings for a long time, longer than you'd think possible for a drop of water to cling. Then, inevitably, it falls. A whole second of anticipation leading to the most predictable outcome in the world. The house is as quiet as the sky is loud, a perfect contrast. If you tried hard, you might hear the faint hum of silence, the creak of floorboards that aren't creaking, the stillness of objects that haven't moved in years. But you don't try hard. You let the stillness stay as still as it wishes to be. The blanket, now securely around your shoulders, feels heavy in just the right way. The kind of weight that convinces you that moving would be unnecessary, even foolish. The rain takes care of everything else. The pacing, the soundtrack, the reminder that today, in all likelihood, will be about nothing in particular. And so the day begins, by not really beginning at all. At some point, you find yourself gazing out of the window as though it's a form of entertainment, and in a way it is. A very low-budget, slow-paced show, where the main cast consists of raindrops, glass, and whatever small bit of the world happens to be visible beyond. The scene doesn't change much. The same branches, slick and heavy with water, the same garden path, now decorated with a few gathering puddles, the same grey horizon that never gets brighter, but also never gets darker, just steady. The drops trace long, uneven lines across the pane. Some hurry, as if impatient, sliding all the way down in one decisive streak. Others hesitate, wobbling halfway, stuck in a kind of watery indecision. A few even merge with their neighbors, becoming larger, heavier, more determined, until they too make the inevitable descent. You watch them without expectation. There's nothing to expect after all. The outcome is always the same, downward. And yet it's oddly satisfying. Each droplet has its own tiny journey, its own brief appearance on the stage of the window, before disappearing into the blur of all the others. The world outside is blurred, softened, smudged by the glass and the rain. Edges vanish, colors dull, shapes melt together. Nothing is sharp, nothing is urgent. It's a painting that keeps repainting itself, slowly, endlessly, with no final version in mind. The longer you stare, the more time seems to dissolve. Minutes, or perhaps hours, slip by unnoticed, while you remain exactly where you are, watching the window as though it might eventually do something surprising. It won't, but that's all right. The rain has perfected the art of being interesting only if you have nothing else to do. Luckily, you don't. You keep staring through the glass because really, there's not much else to do. The outside world has become a watercolor painting, soft, blurred, endlessly damp. Every detail, slightly smudged by the curtain of rain. A branch sways, just faintly, weighed down by droplets that refuse to let go. The movement is slow, reluctant, as though the branch itself is tired of existing in the drizzle. The puddles on the garden path grow, not quickly, not dramatically, just a little wider each time another raindrop lands. They're not impressive puddles, not the kind that call for boots or splashing. They're ordinary shallow, more of a suggestion than a statement. Your eyes follow the rivulets trickling down the glass, each one a small story with no plot. One droplet inches downward, stops, wobbles, then joins another, forming something slightly larger, before continuing the same inevitable descent. It's repetitive, but somehow reassuring, like the world reminding you that even in slowness, things still move along. Inside, the silence thickens. Not a heavy silence, just the kind that arrives when nothing needs to be said, and nothing needs to be done. The room breathes with you, steady, unhurried, its stillness matching the rhythm of the rain. You stay there, not moving, not fidgeting, simply letting the minutes dissolve into the same gray blur as the sky. Watching the window, and nothing else, is, for now, enough. The rain continues its quiet performance, steady, unhurried, completely unbothered by whether you're paying attention. You rest your chin against your hand, leaning toward the glass, watching the same drops slide down in the same slow ways they always do. Nothing changes, and that lack of change is oddly soothing. A faint blur of movement catches your eye beyond the window, but it's only a bird, huddled under the dripping edge of a roof. It looks about as enthusiastic as you feel, feathers puffed, eyes half closed, waiting out the weather without much of a plan. You watch it for a moment, then it disappears behind the curtain of rain, leaving you once again with nothing but blurred branches and puddles to occupy your gaze. The window pane hums softly with the patter of drops, tiny irregular rhythms overlapping, never quite forming a melody, yet steady enough to sink into the background of your thoughts. The sound is so constant, so unvaried, that your mind begins to wander in circles, like someone pacing a room too small to hold anything else. You blink slowly, noticing that the world outside looks no clearer, no brighter, no drier than before. It is the same scene, repeated endlessly, as though time itself has been caught behind the glass, too damp and sluggish to move forward. You breathe, you blink, you watch, and the day goes on exactly as it has been going on since the first drop fell, which is to say, not going anywhere at all. The rain, of course, continues. It does not pause to acknowledge your tea, it does not quicken or soften, it simply goes on, drop after drop, pattering at the window, drumming on the roof, hushing the world outside into a blur. The sound is steady, and it pairs with the tea, as though the two had been planning this collaboration all along. You take another sip, slower this time, letting the steam fog your breath as it curls upward. The smell is faint but familiar, not sharp or bright, just a calm, earthy aroma that feels like it belongs to this rainy morning. You set the mug down on the table beside you, and for a while, you simply look at it. The tea swirls faintly, tiny ripples across its surface, moving as though stirred by invisible fingers. Every so often, the tea bag shifts slightly, releasing another slow stream of color, deepening the liquid shade by shade. You could watch it for hours, though you likely won't. Still, the possibility is there. The chair beneath you holds you steady, creaking faintly when you lean back, as though reminding you that it too has been part of mornings like this for years. You wrap the blanket more firmly around your shoulders, mug in hand, and you sip again. Time moves so slowly here, or perhaps it doesn't move at all. Each sip feels like its own small event. You wonder, briefly, how many sips it will take to finish the mug, but then dismiss the thought. Counting would be too ambitious for a day like this. Instead, you drink without measuring, without marking progress. Sip, pause. Sip, pause. As though each one might be the last, but never really is. Outside, the garden glistens with fresh layers of rain. The puddles expand, but only slightly, too gradually to deserve notice. The leaves shine, their green muted under the grey sky. The branches remain heavy, bowed, waiting for nothing in particular. Another sip, and then another. The warmth spreads, the rain hums, and you realize that this act of slowly drinking tea is enough to fill the morning completely. Nothing else is required. The mug sits comfortably in your hands, not as hot now, but still warm enough to feel alive. The steam no longer curls as strongly as before. It drifts in faint wisps, thinner, more fragile, as though the tea itself is growing a little drowsy. You lift it again, take another sip, and notice the flavor has settled, not sharper, not duller, simply steadier, like the rain outside. There is something reassuring about it, the way each sip is almost identical to the last. It is not a drink that demands your attention. It is a drink that allows you to forget you are drinking it at all. The mug is still heavy, but just slightly less so. The liquid inside swirls faintly when you tilt it, a gentle sound echoing within the ceramic. You watch the surface as you pause, tiny ripples spreading outward, colliding, fading. It looks like a very small pond, one that belongs only to you. The rain has not tired yet. It continues with the same rhythm, 1,000 drops pattering at once, overlapping, merging into a hush that fills every corner of the room. It is background and foreground, all at once. You drink again. The tea has cooled more now, sliding down smoothly, with no urgency. You take longer pauses between each sip, simply holding the mug, feeling its warmth ebbing away slowly. Eventually, you notice the tea is nearly gone. A shallow pool remains at the bottom, darker, stronger, as though the bag left a final mark before surrendering entirely. You tilt the mug, letting the liquid gather on one side, then the other, watching it shift lazily before lifting it to your lips again. The last sip arrives without ceremony. You swallow, set the mug down on the table, and notice the faint ring of moisture it leaves behind. A small circle, a quiet trace of the morning's one accomplishment. The tea is gone now, but the day remains, grey, damp, unhurried. And the rain continues, as though nothing has happened at all. You sit back, the blanket still wrapped around you, the window still streaked with water, the silence still thick with the hum of steady drizzle. The tea is finished, but the uneventful day has only just begun. After the tea, you find your gaze drifting back to the window, and then, slowly, you consider the garden beyond. It is not calling you exactly, gardens rarely do. But something about the steady grey light, and the sheen of water on every surface, makes you pause. Perhaps it is worth stepping outside, just for a moment. You pull the blanket more snugly around your shoulders, then reluctantly set it aside. The room feels cooler without it, though not cold. Just enough to make you miss the warmth immediately. Your steps are quiet as you cross to the door, each creak of the floorboards muffled by the rain. The door opens with a sigh, a faint groan of hinges that have seen better days. At once, the sound of rain grows louder, sharper, closer. Drops splatter against the threshold, and the cool, damp air slips in like an uninvited guest. You stand there for a long moment, not quite stepping out, not quite staying in. Finally you move forward. The ground beneath your feet is soft, darkened by water, every patch of soil heavy with rain. The air carries the faint scent of wet earth, deep, rich, and oddly comforting. Grass glistens, each blade bent under the weight of droplets, some trembling, some bowing low as though exhausted. The leaves of shrubs and trees shine with a muted luster, their surfaces coated in beads of water. Here and there, a drop falls with a tiny plink, shaken loose by a breeze too gentle to call itself wind. The branches sag slightly under the accumulation, quiet and patient, as though enduring rather than resisting. The garden path is slick, mottled with puddles of varying shapes, some shallow enough to ripple at the slightest touch, others deeper, reflecting the dull gray of the sky like unfinished mirrors. You step carefully, not from necessity, but because the slowness feels fitting. Every move is deliberate, unhurried, respectful of the damp silence. Even the colors seem quieter. Greens are subdued, browns deepened, stones muted to dull gray. The garden has no brightness now, only calmness, a soft palette of rain-soaked shades. Nothing grows hurriedly here, nothing wilts dramatically either. It is simply paused, suspended in wetness. You breathe in again, the air cool and moist, carrying the faintest hint of something fresh, something alive. The rain clings to your hair, your skin, your clothes, but not enough to soak, just enough to remind you it is there. The garden offers no surprises, no sudden movements, no bursts of color, no shifts in sound. It is simply a garden under rain, and for now, that is more than enough. You remain in the garden, standing still for a while, as if the dampness itself has asked you politely not to move too quickly. The rain continues its endless patter, small drops, large drops, a scatter of rhythms that never resolve into anything more than background. A shrub near the path leans under the weight of water, every leaf sagging slightly shiny with droplets clinging to their tips. Some drops fall in silence, slipping quietly to the ground, while others hesitate, trembling on the edge before giving in at last. Watching them fall is like watching time itself drip away, one bead at a time, steady, patient, inevitable. The puddles that have gathered on the stone path grow larger, but only in the slowest possible way. They don't splash dramatically, they simply widen, almost without being noticed, until one merges with another. Two small pools becoming a slightly larger pool, hardly an event, but in a garden so quiet, it counts as a change. A bird moves in the branches above you, not singing, not calling out, just shifting from one damp perch to another. Its feathers are puffed against the rain, its head tucked low, as though the drizzle has convinced it to conserve its energy. You watch it pause, shake, then still again, blending back into the grayness of the morning. The scent of wet soil grows stronger as you breathe deeply, earthy, cool, familiar. It is not sharp, not sweet. just a grounding smell that belongs only to days like this. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the damp air rest against your skin. The drops find their way onto your hair, down your collar, small reminders that you are sharing the same stillness as the garden itself. Everywhere surfaces gleam. Stones shine dark and slick. The bark of trees is darker, richer in its texture. Even the smallest weeds at the edge of the path stand upright, sparkling faintly with beads of water like glass. The rain has given everything a sheen, but not one of brilliance, only of patience. You take a slow step forward, then another. The soft squelch of soil beneath your foot is muted, swallowed quickly by the surrounding hush. No one else is here. Nothing else stirs. The garden is not waiting for you. It is not performing for you. It simply exists, rain-soaked, and you happen to be standing in it. You pause again. There is no reason not to. The world has slowed to a crawl, and it seems almost rude to hurry. You linger, not because there's anything to linger for, but because moving feels unnecessary. The rain has settled into every corner of the garden, and now it seems to be settling into you as well. Drops slip from the eaves above, landing one by one into a shallow puddle. Each makes the faintest ripple, a circle expanding, fading, disappearing into stillness again. Another drop falls, another ripple begins. Over and over, the same small story, never changing its ending. The branches sway only slightly, nudged by a breeze too tired to be called wind. Each leaf glimmers under its thin coat of water, some trembling faintly, some utterly still. Every surface carries the same quiet gloss, as though the rain has claimed the garden as its own, and polished it with care. You crouch for a moment near a patch of grass. Up close, the blades look almost like threads of glass, thin, delicate, beaded with tiny droplets that magnify their green into something deeper, darker. The earth beneath is soft, darker still, heavy with water it cannot refuse. A worm shifts just beneath the surface, hidden but present, as if even the soil itself is drowsy. Standing again, you look around once more, though nothing new has appeared. The same path, the same puddles, the same patient shrubs and bowed branches. The scene is steady, unchanging, and in that steadiness lies its comfort. You realize, after a long while, that you've lost track of how long you've been here. A few minutes, or half an hour, or more. It doesn't matter. The rain makes every measure of time feel identical. At last, you turn back toward the house. Not hurriedly, not reluctantly, simply because standing still has reached its natural conclusion. The door creaks softly as you open it again, and you step back inside. The garden remains behind you, just as damp, just as grey, just as unchanged as when you left it. and the rain continues endlessly, effortlessly, as though you had never stepped out at all. Back inside, you find yourself drawn once again to the window. The same view, the same garden, but now your eyes settle on the puddles. They've been there since the first drops fell, shallow at first, then wider, and now, gradually, still growing. A puddle is not dramatic. It does not rush or demand attention. It simply waits, collecting drop after drop, widening without hurry, deepening without fuss. One small splash, another, and another, until a circle of water spreads quietly across the stone. The surface shivers each time a raindrop lands. Tiny ripples race outward, colliding with other ripples, overlapping in small, irregular patterns. It is never the same pattern twice, and yet it is always the same kind of pattern. Familiar, predictable, endlessly repeating. Some puddles stay shallow, no more than a sheen of wetness across the stone. Others sink into slight hollows, becoming mirrors of the grey sky. You can almost see the branches reflected in them, blurred, wobbly, shifting with each disturbance of the rain. The reflections never last long, always broken by the next drop, always temporary. The sound is softer now, not just the patter on the roof, but the delicate plink of water hitting water. A drop falls into one puddle, then another, then another. Each sound is small, easily lost beneath the larger hush of rain, but together they create a rhythm, irregular yet steady, like a quiet instrument playing beneath the main melody. You watch as one puddle creeps slowly across a stone slab, reaching the edge where the ground dips slightly. A trickle begins, barely noticeable at first, then gathering just enough strength to connect with another puddle below. Two small pools become one, slightly larger, slightly deeper, yet still nothing extraordinary, just water, finding more water. Your eyes drift from puddle to puddle, following their shapes, their ripples, their merging lines. It is an endless process, one you could watch for hours, and perhaps you will, because really, what else is there to do? The rain gives the puddles purpose, and the puddles in turn give the rain somewhere to rest. The puddles continue their slow work, not rushing, not striving, just expanding in their quiet, deliberate fashion. One puddle has grown large enough now to cover nearly the entire stepping stone outside. Its surface gleams faintly, reflecting a pale version of the sky. Every raindrop that lands upon it bends the reflection, scattering the image of branches and grey clouds into a quivering blur. The puddle does not resist. It only receives again and again, each drop folding into its surface without hesitation. The smaller puddles seem to lean toward one another, inch by inch until they touch. When they finally meet, there is no sound, no announcement, just a merging, as natural and inevitable as breathing. Two become one, and one becomes wider, deeper, more certain of its place. Along the edge of the path, a thin stream of water begins to snake its way through blades of grass. It doesn't rush like a brook or a stream in the hills. It meanders slowly, pausing at roots, pooling in hollows, then continuing forward as if considering each step. Eventually, it finds its way into a waiting hollow, where yet another puddle forms, another mirror of the muted sky above. You notice how the surfaces differ. Some puddles are smooth, glass-like, holding their reflections in steady silence. Others are busy, restless, their surfaces constantly disturbed by the patter of rain. Some puddles quiver with every drop, others seem to absorb the impacts without a trace. And then there are the smallest ones, tiny collections of water caught in imperfections of stone or earth, barely noticeable, yet they glisten just as brightly as the larger pools. Each one is a world of its own, shallow, fleeting, but complete. As you watch, you realize that the garden itself is no longer just a garden. It has become a map of water. Puddles here, streams there, rivulets and reflections stitched across the ground. The rain is not merely falling onto the garden, it is reshaping it, little by little, without effort or intention. And through it all, the sound persists, not loud, not forceful, just the ceaseless, patient rhythm of drops finding their place. A rhythm so steady, so repetitive, that it begins to fold over your thoughts, smoothing them down, one after another, until your mind feels as quiet as the puddles themselves. You breathe, and the puddles continue. The rain does not pause, and the puddles do not resist. Drop after drop falls, each one absorbed without question. Over time, slowly, patiently, the smaller pools stretch toward one another. A trickle here, a thin sheen there, until edges overlap. What were once many puddles become fewer, larger, smoother. The garden path is no longer dotted with water, but veined with it, wide patches of glistening gray broken only by stones and tufts of grass. The largest puddle has spread so far that it mirrors nearly the entire tree above. Branches waver across its surface, bending with every raindrop, splitting and reforming as though the tree itself were trembling. The reflection is imperfect, unstable, and yet mesmerizing in its persistence. Each drop leaves a circle behind it, circles upon circles, expanding until they overlap, fading before they reach the edges. It is a pattern that repeats endlessly, never reaching a conclusion, never needing one. You watch it happen again and again and again, until the process itself feels like breathing. Even the ground seems to have accepted its fate. The earth, darkened with water, no longer resists. It allows the puddles to remain, to sink in slowly, steadily, at their own pace. Nothing hurried, nothing forced, just the gradual exchange between sky and soil, between rain and ground. A faint breeze stirs, and the puddles quiver all at once. For a moment, the reflections break into fragments, shivering into abstract shapes. Then the breeze passes, and the surface is still again, resuming their quiet work of widening, deepening, merging. The puddles are no longer interruptions to the garden. They are the garden. The rain has remade it into a place of mirrors, ripples, and quiet circles. The familiar paths and stones are only outlines now, edges breaking the otherwise seamless spread of water. You watch without needing to decide when to stop. The puddles do not end. They do not complete themselves. They only continue, as the rain continues, as time itself continues. Patient, uneventful, steady. And after a while you turn away from the window, not because the scene has finished, but because it never will. Back inside, the room feels hushed, the rain muffled now by walls and glass. And in the center of it all, sprawled in absolute disregard for human busyness, lies the cat. The cat is not complicated. It does not question the rain, nor sigh at the grayness of the day. It simply claims a patch of floor, a mat by the window, still faintly warm from earlier light, and settles upon it with total commitment. First, the slow turning one circle, then another, as if measuring the exact dimensions of comfort. Then the pause, the lowering, the gentle press of weight against woven fibers, and at last, the collapse, a soft surrender of paws and fur into stillness. The cat blinks once, twice, eyelids heavy, deliberate. The room already felt quiet, but now it feels quieter still, as though even the air has lowered its voice out of respect. Outside, the rain continues, steady, endless. Inside, the cat breathes, and the two rhythms together, rain and breath, are enough to fill the silence completely. Time stretches. The cat has not moved, except perhaps to extend one paw further into the world, or to twitch an ear at some distant sound. Its whiskers rest in stillness, its chest rises and falls without ceremony. You sit nearby doing nothing at all, watching nothing happen. The cat's breathing becomes its own kind of metronome. Inhale, exhale, pause, repeat. Each breath like a marker of minutes that don't need counting. Rain softens against the window. Droplets gather and slide, but the sound no longer competes for attention. It blends into the cat's rhythm, into the hush of the room, into the simple patience of waiting without purpose. Occasionally, the cat's tail gives the faintest flick. Not a gesture of irritation, nor of intent, just a small unconscious adjustment, as if even in sleep the cat is aware of itself, maintaining the perfect balance between stillness and repose. The silence becomes layered, rain outside, breath inside, and you, seated quietly in the middle, observing. There is nothing more to seek. The cat has made a study of stillness, and you are its apprentice. The nap deepens. The cat curls tighter, its nose tucked into fur, paws folded close. Even its tail quiets, a perfect, compact circle of rest. No sound of purring now, only breath. A sound so soft you might mistake it for silence, and perhaps it is silence, only given shape. Minutes blur. The cat does not stir. The room does not change. The rain continues without pause, without variation. You begin to feel as though the day itself has curled up beside the cat, folded neatly into a long, unremarkable rest. The longer you watch, the less the boundaries seem to matter. The rain, the cat, the hush of the house, your own quiet presence. All of it dissolves into the same soft suspension of time. A suspension that does not ask anything of you, except to notice that it exists. At last you lean back, letting your eyes close as well. The cat sleeps, the rain falls, and the silence continues without interruption. Nothing more is required. The room is still unchanged, since the cat folded itself into slumber. The air carries a faint dampness from the garden you left behind, but otherwise there is little to notice. And then, so faint you almost wonder if you imagined it, you hear it. A tick. Not loud, not commanding, just a single sound in the hush of the house. And then, after a pause so long it nearly disappears, another tick. Your eyes shift toward the source, the clock on the far wall. An ordinary clock, nothing elegant or antique, just a round face, a frame of simple wood, and hands that move as if they have nowhere else to be. The ticking is steady, not rushed, not dragging. A tick every second. A pause between each sound. The rhythm continues. Tick, pause, as if time itself is taking the smallest possible steps forward. The sound settles into the room until it feels less like a clock and more like the pulse of the house itself. Each tick enters the silence, lingers for a moment, then dissolves, leaving space for the next. Outside, the rain has not stopped. Inside, the clock does not stop. The two sounds overlap. The rain, a flowing background. The clock, a single note, repeating, repeating, repeating. The longer you sit, the more you realize the day could be measured entirely in ticks. And maybe it is. The ticks stretch into minutes. Minutes that seem to last longer than they should. Perhaps the rain makes them heavier. Perhaps the silence makes them slow. Whatever the cause, you begin to notice details that would usually escape you. The faint echo of each tick, for instance. The way the wooden frame seems to soften the sound, giving it a slight hollow edge. The way the sound changes if you shift in your chair, hearing it from a slightly different angle. It is not one tick repeated, it is 1,000 tiny variations of the same tick, each shaped by where you are, by how still you listen. The cat twitches faintly at the sound, but does not wake. Its sleep is deeper now, more absolute. For a moment you imagine the clock ticking in rhythm with the cat's breath. Not exact, not perfect, but close enough to form a kind of companionship. Your eyes drift to the clock face itself. The second hand moves with certainty, a smooth sweep, stopping only to punctuate the silence with its sound. The minute hand, slower, barely perceptible. The hour hand, slower still. So slow you almost forget it exists. Yet together they mark the passage of time, whether you notice or not. The ticks keep arriving, each one the same distance from the next. There is no surprise, no rush, just an endless line of sounds that will not stop until the day itself stops. And strangely, there is comfort in that. Eventually, the ticking becomes so familiar that you almost cease to hear it. It fades into the background, like breathing, like rain, like the hush of a room in which nothing stirs. Yet when you focus on it again, it is still there, still faithful, still steady. The rain falls, the cat sleeps, the clock ticks, 3 rhythms layered on top of one another, none competing, none demanding. Together, they create a kind of music, an accidental symphony of uneventful sounds. Time passes, though it doesn't feel like passing. It feels more like sinking. Sinking into a moment that repeats endlessly, a moment that has no need for beginnings or endings, just tick after tick, rain after rain, breath after breath. You wonder how many ticks have sounded since you first noticed. Dozens, hundreds. You could count, but you don't. Counting would break the spell. Better to let the ticks accumulate quietly, like drops in a puddle, until they form a pool too large to measure. And so you sit, listening, not waiting for anything, not marking anything, just listening, until listening itself becomes as uneventful and soothing as the sound it follows. The clock ticks on. The thought of lunch arrives not with hunger nor with excitement, but simply because the clock has ticked far enough to suggest it must be that time. The cat remains asleep. The rain continues. And you rise, not with any real enthusiasm, but with the sense that standing up is the next uneventful step in a day already full of them. In the kitchen, the shelves and cupboards wait without ceremony. They do not offer much in the way of inspiration. Bread, butter, perhaps some cheese, a few apples that have been sitting patiently in a bowl. Nothing dramatic, nothing adventurous, but then again, adventure is hardly the mood of the day. You select a loaf of bread, its crust is plain, its middle pale and soft. Slicing it is not difficult, but it takes time nonetheless. The knife presses, saws gently, crumbs scattering onto the wooden board. Each slice lands with a soft thud, one atop the other. You don't rush, there's no reason to. The bread will remain bread whether you slice it quickly or slowly. Butter follows. The cool slab resists the knife for a moment before yielding. A curl of pale yellow spreads across the bread's surface. Not evenly, not elegantly, but adequately. The kind of spread that looks like what it is, lunch made without occasion. You take a step back, considering. Bread, butter, perhaps cheese, perhaps not. Does it matter? Not really. The meal is not a destination, just another tick on the clock, another ripple in the puddles outside. The cheese is chosen, not because it is special, but because it is there. A small block, wrapped in paper, sitting in the cold quiet of the fridge. You unwrap it slowly, the paper crackling softly in your hands, as though trying to remind you that even this is part of the day's rhythm. Cutting cheese is not an art here. It is not carved into delicate slices or arranged neatly. It is divided, simply enough, into pieces that will sit reasonably on the bread. You place them down, one by one. The bread becomes a sandwich. The sandwich becomes lunch. Nothing more. An apple rolls in the bowl. You pick it up, weighing its roundness in your palm. It is smooth, slightly cool, faintly speckled. You turn it once, twice, then place it on the table beside the sandwich. A meal has been assembled. Not created, not prepared with flair, simply assembled, like furniture that requires no instructions. You sit at the table. The rain patters faintly at the window. The clock ticks behind you. The cat shifts in its sleep, but does not wake. The sandwich waits. The apple waits. And you take your first bite, which is exactly as you imagined it would be. Bread, butter, cheese. Familiar, adequate, unremarkable. Each bite is slow. Not because you mean it to be, but because there is no reason to hurry. Lunch is not leading anywhere, it is just here. You chew, swallow, breathe, repeat. The rain falls. The clock ticks. The cat dreams. By the time the sandwich is gone, you realize you have hardly thought about it at all. It was not a meal to be remembered, nor one to be regretted. It was simply an act that occurred between one tick of the clock and the next. The apple is bitten into with the same patience. Its skin cracks softly, the faint sweetness spreading across your tongue. Not extraordinary, not disappointing, just apple. You chew, you swallow, you continue. Each bite feels the same as the last, until the apple is no longer an apple, but a series of fragments reduced quietly to nothing. The plate remains. A few crumbs, a smudge of butter, a rind of cheese. You gather them without ceremony, brushing the crumbs into your hand, setting the plate in the sink. Not washed yet. There is no urgency, but placed there as though to mark the task complete. You sit again, returning to your chair by the window. The rain still falls. The clock still ticks. The cat still sleeps. Lunch has been eaten, but nothing has really changed. The day continues at the same slow pace. unshaken by your brief foray into the kitchen. And in that sameness lies a quiet relief. Nothing has shifted. Nothing has surprised. Lunch has passed exactly as expected, and so the afternoon can proceed exactly as the morning did. Steady, uneventful, familiar. You notice it first, not with your eyes, but with your ears. A sound joins the rain, not quite louder, not quite different, but distinct enough to catch your attention. A new rhythm, a steady trickle. At the edge of the house, the rain gutter has reached its quiet limit. Drop after drop has gathered, flowing along its narrow channel, until it can hold no more. And now, at last, the excess has found its escape, spilling over in a thin, unwavering stream. You step closer to the window. The overflow is unremarkable in appearance, just water falling where water should not, yet the sight holds your gaze. The stream is constant, patient, indifferent, a single ribbon of rain descending against the siding, darkening the wall with a trail of dampness. It is not dramatic. It is not even inconvenient. It is simply what happens when enough rain meets enough time. The gutter cannot help itself. The water cannot be stopped. And so it continues, pouring, steady, unbothered, joining the puddles below with a sound that is both repetitive and oddly soothing. The longer you watch, the more you notice small details, the way the water gathers at the lip of the gutter, hesitating for the briefest moment before letting go. The way it twists slightly as it falls, not a perfect stream but a shifting one, catching bits of light from the grey sky. The way droplets break free from the main ribbon, drifting off on their own to splash elsewhere. Beneath the gutter, a dark patch has formed on the earth. The soil softens, sinking under the endless drip. A small crater begins to shape itself, a tiny hollow, filling slowly, rippling with each drop that lands. Around it, blades of grass bend lower and lower, coated in beads of water until they droop under the weight. The sound itself becomes hypnotic. Not the broad hush of the rain, but the sharp, steady splash of water hitting water. A single note, repeated endlessly. It punctuates the larger silence of the garden, marking each second with a clarity the clock indoors would envy. You lean against the window frame, listening. You imagine you could stand here for hours, watching the gutter do its work, and nothing would change, except the hollow deepening, the puddle widening, the day continuing its grey stretch forward. Eventually you open the door, stepping outside just enough to feel the mist against your face. The air is cool, heavy with dampness. The sound of the overflowing gutter is louder here, more insistent, though still far from urgent. You stand beneath it for a moment, watching the steady fall. The stream splashes into the hollow below, water meeting water in an endless loop. The puddle now reflects a small corner of the house, its surface broken again and again by the very thing that created it. Around you the garden is unchanged. The same shrubs, the same branches, the same puddles stretching further across the stones. Yet the gutter's overflow feels like a small performance. Unplanned, unremarkable, and yet somehow worth noticing. A breeze stirs. The stream shifts slightly, carried an inch to the left. The puddle adjusts accordingly, its surface trembling with new ripples. Nothing dramatic, but enough to remind you that even the most uneventful things are not fixed entirely. You breathe, step back, and close the door again. The gutter continues to overflow, as it will until the rain eases, or until the garden grows too saturated to care. Either way, it will not demand your attention. It will simply happen, with or without you. Inside, the clock ticks, the cat sleeps, the rain falls. And outside, a thin stream of water pours patiently over the edge of a gutter, as though it intends to keep doing so forever. The day moves forward, though if you were asked to prove it, you might hesitate. The light has not shifted much. The sky remains a uniform grey, unbroken, uninterested. The rain has not changed its rhythm. The house has not altered its hush. And yet, in some quiet, subtle way, you know the morning has slipped behind you and the afternoon has begun. The afternoon does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, like someone slipping into a room already full of silence. You notice only because you feel it. Not hunger, not fatigue, but a faint heaviness. The kind of weight that suggests hours are moving, but slower than they should. The clock ticks. The cat shifts slightly, though still asleep. A car passes on a distant road, its sound muffled almost immediately by the steady rain. Then the silence returns, layered again with the same two rhythms, rain and time. You glance at the window. The puddles are larger but not strikingly so. The garden is darker but not noticeably. Everything looks the same, only a little more saturated, as though the day has decided to copy itself endlessly, with only slight variations. It is an afternoon that demands nothing from you, and so you do nothing. You sit, you breathe, you listen to the sameness, and the hours drag on, gentle, uneventful, undisturbed. The heaviness of the afternoon deepens. Minutes feel longer than minutes should. Each tick of the clock stretches like elastic, as though it must travel further than usual before the next can begin. You lean back in your chair, arms folded loosely, and find yourself watching the same corner of the room you've looked at a dozen times already. The wall is pale, blank, faintly shadowed by the muted light. Nothing changes. Nothing moves, and yet you keep looking, as though the absence of change itself is a spectacle worth studying. The rain has softened slightly, not stopped, just gentler, less insistent. The sound is more like a murmur now, a constant whisper against the glass. Each drop seems to fall further apart from the last, even if the rhythm has not truly changed. It is your perception that shifts, slowed by the weight of the afternoon. The cat sighs in its sleep, a long, drawn-out breath, and then returns to silence. You find yourself envying it. The cat does not wonder about the pace of time, nor care whether minutes feel longer or shorter. It simply sleeps through the drag of the day, surrendering entirely to stillness. You sit, feeling the same urge, not to sleep exactly, but to dissolve into the afternoon itself, to match its slowness, its resistance to progress. Eventually you rise, but without purpose. You cross the room, not to fetch anything, not to accomplish anything, but simply to move. Your steps sound louder than they should, echoing slightly in the hush. The floorboards creak once, then quiet. You pause by the window again. Outside, the sky looks no different, yet you sense it has shifted closer to evening. The light is duller perhaps, or perhaps your eyes are heavier. The garden looks tired, its leaves weighed down, its puddles wide and unbothered. The gutter still overflows, its thin stream carving the same wet mark down the wall. You return to your chair. The clock ticks, the rain falls, the afternoon drags on, resisting any urge to become evening too quickly. Time is moving, but it feels reluctant, like a child being nudged forward by a parent, dragging its feet, unwilling to admit that the day is going anywhere at all. And so you remain, caught in the slow pull of hours that do not seem to want to end. The afternoon stretches longer, heavier, softer, and you stretch along with it, sinking into its endless grey rhythm. The rain is steady again, the clock is steady too, and for a long while nothing at all has moved. Then, without warning, the cat exhales in a different rhythm. It shifts, barely at first, one paw twitching, a whisker brushing against the air. It is not a grand awakening, more of a slow return from wherever cats go when their eyes close. A pause, a stretch of silence, and then the faint rustle of fur against fabric. The cat curls its spine, elongates its body, flexes claws into the softness of its blanket. A small sound escapes, not a meow, not a yawn exactly, but something in between. You glance over, not because it is loud, but because it is something. In a day where the rain has been the only performer, the cat has chosen this moment to stir, and it feels almost remarkable. A tail swishes once, then again, then lies still. The ears tilt, one after the other, registering some distant sound, or perhaps only the idea of sound. And then, stillness again. The cat is half asleep still, eyes closed, paws folded, breathing deep. Yet something about the silence has shifted. as though the air itself has been reminded that movement is possible. The cat rolls onto its side, belly exposed, fur rippling slightly as it resettles. One paw stretches outward, flexing against nothing. A sigh, long and deliberate, escapes, and then, eyes open, just a sliver, golden light glinting beneath half-closed lids. The gaze is unfocused at first, drifting lazily around the room, as though the cat is not entirely convinced it wishes to be awake. The eyes pause on you for a moment, then drift away again, unimpressed. Another blink follows, slower this time, softer, before the lids sink shut once more. The rain continues against the window, the rhythm unchanged. The clock ticks on. The cat's whiskers twitch once, perhaps at some imagined sound, perhaps at nothing at all. Cats are masters of giving importance to the insignificant, and this too is no exception. You watch as the cat shifts again, rolling back to its stomach, folding paws neatly beneath its chest. It seems a decision has been made. The nap is over. Not the laziness, not the stillness, but the specific act of deep sleep. From here the afternoon may continue with a cat who is at least partly awake, a subtle but undeniable shift in the balance of the room. The cat rises, slowly, deliberately, as though remembering how its body works. Each leg extends one at a time, each joint given its due attention. A stretch flows through its spine, long and arching, tail lifting high before settling back again. The paws press lightly into the blanket, then release. The first few steps are soundless, paws padding across the floor without effort. The cat pauses, mid-room, to yawn, an extravagant display of sharp teeth, followed by the satisfied snap of a jaw returning to rest. Then, as though the performance were entirely for itself, the cat sits again, perfectly composed, licking one paw with careful precision. Outside, the rain does not care. It falls as it has fallen all day. The gutter still overflows, the puddles still widen, the garden still sags beneath its weight. But inside, the smallest drama has unfolded. A nap has ended, and a cat has resumed its role as quiet overseer of the house. The silence of the day feels different now, less absolute, more alive. The clock ticks, the rain falls, and the cat, no longer sleeping, breathes its quiet presence into the room. And so, the afternoon continues, uneventful, yet not entirely unchanged. The light outside is not gone, but it is going. You notice it not all at once, but in the way objects seem to lose their edges. The garden, once grey, now leans towards something darker, softer. The outlines of branches blur against the sky. The puddles still shine faintly, but their reflections are muted, fading, as though the day is too tired to keep polishing them. Indoors the shift is slower still. Corners grow shadowed, walls that were pale are tinged with dusk. The cat, seated in its quiet authority, appears darker too, fur deepened by the thinning light, eyes glimmering faintly as they catch what remains of the sky. The clock continues, steady, unconcerned with brightness or dimness. The rain continues too, though even it seems quieter, softer, blending into the hush of the hour. Time itself feels slowed, as though the weight of evening is pressing gently against the house. You do not rush to switch on a lamp. Instead, you let the dimness gather, let the light grow duller minute by minute, until the room is more shadow than clarity. The dulling light has its own rhythm. Each passing minute subtracts something, erases some small detail from the view. The veins of the leaves outside are no longer visible. The streaks on the window pane vanish into the blur. The texture of the garden path softens into sameness. Indoors, shadows stretch. A chair in the corner grows taller, its outline blurred into the wall. The table's edge dissolves, its shape suggested more than seen. You find yourself listening more than looking, as though sound is a substitute for sight. The rain provides the soundtrack, constant and familiar, steadying the slow transition. The cat has settled once more, this time perched on the windowsill, as though monitoring the darkening garden. Its tail flicks lazily now and then, an occasional gesture in an otherwise perfect stillness. The small gleam of its eyes feels almost like a lantern, two faint glows marking the dimming space. The day outside slides downward, hour by hour, into something softer, heavier, slower, and you let it, because resisting would be pointless. The dullness belongs to the afternoon's surrender. By now the light is neither bright nor gone, but suspended in its in-between, a dusky grey, stretched thin across the sky, enough to see, but not enough to clarify. The garden is a single mass of shadow. The puddles reflect almost nothing. The gutter's overflow is still there, but harder to notice, more heard than seen. The room holds its dimness like a blanket. You feel it settle on your shoulders, on the floor, in the air itself. The rain sound feels louder in comparison, as though it has been waiting for the light to fade so it can be the day's final voice. The cat turns once in the windowsill, curling into itself again. Its tail wraps neatly, its head tucks down. One last slow blink, then its eyes close. The faint glow disappears, and the room is left with nothing but shadows and sound. The dullness is not frightening. It is not even melancholy. It is simply the day, doing what days do. Light fades, evening approaches, and everything grows softer, quieter, slower, until only stillness remains.